Today is Wednesday, October 18th. We are talking about a deadly explosion at a hospital in Gaza and how Israel and militant groups are blaming each other for the blast. Also, President Biden's response to all of this as his trip to Israel gets underway and why his other travel plans in the Middle East are now canceled. Plus, we'll explain new controversy surrounding a staple for American schools, what beauty products the FDA is trying to ban, and how much do workers spend when they return to office? New data breaks down the extra costs. Those stories and more news to know today coming up. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. President Biden is expected to arrive in Israel this morning in the wake of one of the single deadliest incidents so far in the Gaza Strip. Yesterday, an explosion hit a hospital that was packed with people who were there taking shelter, as well as those who were sick or hurt. And some reports say at least 500 people were killed. But those numbers are being disputed, and it's also not clear who is responsible. The Hamas terror group has blamed Israel, saying it was an Israeli airstrike that hit the hospital. But Israel's military says it was actually the result of a failed rocket launch by another radical Palestinian militant group that often works with Hamas. Either way, it's a tragedy that adds to a growing death toll. It has complicated efforts to contain this crisis. Leaders all across the Arab world condemned the blast, and tense protests broke out in several countries. Also, Jordan's foreign minister canceled a summit his country was supposed to host with President Biden and the Egyptian and Palestinian leaders. Plus, the Hezbollah militant group called for a day of unprecedented anger against Israel and Biden's visit specifically. President Biden is now only going to visit Israel during his trip to the Middle East. He's set to meet with Israeli officials, first responders, and families of victims. One of his main objectives was to stress the need for humanitarian aid to reach Gaza. But there does seem to be at least some progress on that front already. Israel's defense forces announced this morning it created a humanitarian zone in southern Gaza where international aid will be handed out. And that is crucial since critical supplies, including food and water, are running out. The UN also says hospitals across Gaza are now just hours away from running out of fuel. And that means the only way for the facilities to get electricity, backup generators, will stop working. And the lives of thousands of patients will be in jeopardy. Israel has said it's been worried about aid getting into the hands of Hamas instead of those who need it. But it reportedly agreed to the safe zone after negotiations with the U.S., Egypt, and others. Still, even before yesterday's hospital explosion, Gaza health authorities said at least 3,000 people have died. And at this point, there's still no way for people to get out of Gaza, as all border crossings are closed. The Israeli military says it has only been targeting Hamas hideouts, infrastructure, and command centers, but that Hamas hides behind civilians, and that's why residential buildings, mosques, schools, and more have been hit. Of course, there have been a lot of casualties on the other side, too. 1,400 people in Israel have been killed, and others are still being held hostage. Israeli civilians are also forced to take shelter often as Hamas continues to fire rockets, though Israel's army has been able to intercept them so far. Of course, Hamas and Israel have gone to war several times before, but never on this scale. And at this point, there's still no resolution in sight. Well, this week, Ukraine surpassed 600 days of war as Russia's invasion wears on. But now, both sides seem to be stepping up their attacks and counterattacks. Russia has dispatched thousands of soldiers with heavy armor and artillery into eastern Ukraine. And military analysts tell the New York Times that's Russia's largest push since last winter. Meanwhile, Ukrainian forces used long-range ballistic missiles from the U.S. for the first time. Ukraine's President Zelensky says the weapons had proven themselves yesterday since troops were apparently able to inflict heavy damage on 2 airfields in Russian-occupied areas of Ukraine. The Ukrainian government has actually been asking the U.S. for these types of missiles for a long time before the Biden administration agreed to send them, since American officials worried about escalating that war. As part of this deal with the U.S., though, Ukraine promised not to use them inside Russia's territory. But Ukraine still says the powerful weapons could alter the course of the war from here on out. It has now been more than 2 weeks since the U.S. House has been able to get anything done. Remember, they've been without a speaker ever since Kevin McCarthy was voted out. And at this point, it's not clear what will finally put an end to the gridlock. Ultra-conservative Congressman Jim Jordan did not win nearly enough votes in yesterday's speaker election, since all Democrats and 20 GOP lawmakers voted against him. There's another vote scheduled for this morning, but it's not clear if it'll be any different. Now, some lawmakers from both parties are talking about other options, like maybe getting a temporary speaker in. They're eager to get moving on things like more aid for Israel. The White House also wants them to tie in funding for Ukraine and Taiwan and for U.S. border security. And then there are looming deadlines to fund the government beyond next month, to pass the Farm Bill, and more. But lawmakers cannot do any of that without a speaker. So stay tuned. More news is still coming up, but first, support for today's episode comes from Trust and Will. At this time in my life, with a toddler and getting ready to move into a new home, I'm trying to really appreciate all the joyful moments these big life milestones bring. But here's the thing. We can sometimes forget one crucial detail: securing our family's future. And for good reason. Traditional estate planning can cost thousands of dollars and feel really complex. That's where Trust and Will comes in. I was so pleasantly surprised at how simple it was for my husband and I to create our will. We did it from the comfort of our home. The website is very user-friendly, and the whole process is straightforward. No wonder Trust and Will has earned an overall rating of excellent, with thousands of 5-star reviews on Trustpilot. Gain peace of mind today with Trust and Will. Get 10% off plus free shipping of your estate plan documents by visiting trustandwill.com/newsworthy. That's 10% off and free shipping at trustandwill.com/newsworthy. Okay, now back to the news. The FDA says it wants to protect Americans from a variety of products it has deemed harmful. First, menthol cigarettes and flavored cigars. The FDA has been talking about taking them out of circulation for years, saying a ban could prevent up to 650,000 smoking deaths over 40 years. The agency points specifically to the toll on young people and black smokers. Data has shown both prefer the mint flavor of menthols, which health officials have said has a cooling effect on the mouth and throat that can mask the harshness of smoking. But a trade association that represents tens of thousands of stores that sell tobacco products is arguing against this ban, saying restrictions will not suddenly make smokers quit, but will just promote an illegal marketplace. Either way, the FDA has now sent its proposed ban to the White House for final review. Then, once it is finalized, tobacco companies are expected to sue. Separately, the FDA is planning to ban certain hair straighteners and smoothers. Specifically, it would ban products that contain formaldehyde, like those used for Brazilian blowouts. It would also apply to products used in so-called keratin treatments that claim to be formaldehyde-free, but contain another substance that converts to formaldehyde once it comes in contact with the air. This ban has also been expected since research from the National Institutes of Health and elsewhere has found a link between using the chemical hair straighteners regularly and a higher risk of developing cancer. Now the FDA is collecting public comments, and it's targeting April of next year for the ban to go into effect. Some of the most well-known shopping and travel sites are joining forces. We're talking Amazon, Expedia, TripAdvisor, Glassdoor, and more. And together, they're starting a coalition to fight fake reviews. Bogus reviews have been a growing problem lately. Sellers have apparently been soliciting fake reviews through social media and messaging apps, offering up money, free items, or other benefits in exchange for a rave. And some even ask people to post fake negative reviews for competitors, making it hard to believe any of the reviews you see online. So now the so-called Coalition for Trusted Reviews is going to start sharing methods on detecting fakes, the best ways to host real reviews, and more. They're planning to meet later this year and then regularly after that. There's some new controversy surrounding one beloved tradition at American schools: Scholastic book fairs. The company behind the fairs changed its policy this year to help schools navigate the growing number of book bans around the country. It decided to have a separate section for books that deal with race, gender, and sexuality. For example, books about Black public figures like Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson and superstar NBA player LeBron James, a graphic novel featuring the Black Panther superhero, and a book about different family types like adoptive families and families with same-sex parents. Schools now get the choice to either include or exclude that set of books. Scholastic says it doesn't really have a choice, that it can't risk making teachers, librarians, or volunteers vulnerable to being fired or sued. Still, some people are pretty upset. Some writers, librarians, and other educators have accused the company of helping to enable censorship, and free speech organization PEN America called on Scholastic to explore other solutions. But another group says the change isn't going far enough, and has called on parents and schools to, quote, cancel Scholastic. As it argues, there are still books at book fairs that include ideas like what it calls the LGBTQIA agenda. For now, though, Scholastic is continuing to host about 90% of the book fairs that it ran a few years ago, before most book bans were proposed. There's a new hottest pepper in the world. It was created by the founder of Puckerbutt Pepper Company, Ed Curry. He actually created the previous record holder, too, the Carolina Reaper. But for the last 10 years, he's been working on Pepper X. To measure the intensity of Pepper X, Guinness officials measured the concentration of certain chemical compounds, and they found it was actually 2 to 3 times spicier than its predecessor. It's also hotter than police-issued pepper spray and bear spray. As for the taste, Curry says it has an earthy flavor. He also describes feeling an intense burn and pain throughout his body for hours after eating a Pepper X, though only 5 people in the world have ever actually eaten one, including Curry. Now Curry is apparently already trying to create a pepper that's even hotter. That's it for the main news today, so now it's time for Work Wednesday, when we break down one interesting career or work-related news story every Wednesday. But first, this podcast is sponsored by AG1. AG1 has become part of my daily routine. It's the daily foundation nutrition supplement that means I don't have to take a ton of different pills every day. It can replace a daily multivitamin, probiotic, and more. It's just a single solution that supports my entire body. I wanted better gut health, a boost in energy, and immune system support, and I love that I get all that with one scoop of AG1 mixed with water. Well, I like to add ice and a splash of lemon juice a lot of the times, and then I'm good to go. It's easy to drink and easy to make part of my regular routine. I also appreciate how hydrating it is first thing in the morning. I like to drink it before I've even had breakfast, and it really sets me up to feel great and be ready to take on the day. If you're looking for a simpler, effective investment for your health, try AG1. And get 5 free AG1 travel packs and a free 1-year supply of vitamin D with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/newsworthy. That's drinkag1.com/newsworthy. Check it out. Okay, now back to Work Wednesday. So it seems a lot of American workers are back in the office now, and it's costing them to be there. Video conferencing firm Owl Labs released new data from a survey that found about 66% of respondents say they're back in office 5 days a week once again. And that's compared to just 41% last year. Not only that, but today's in-office employee is apparently spending an average of $51 a day. Think $16 on lunch, $14 on commuting, $13 on breakfast and coffee, and about $8 just on parking. And pet owners will add about $20 a day to your average if you need pet care. We're talking more than $1,000 a month for full-timers or more than $400 a month for hybrid workers. So it seems many workers would like to be compensated to make up for those extra costs. Employees may ask for higher salaries, new career opportunities, or the thing that Owl Labs found is one of the most desired perks for 3 years in a row now, more flexibility. Thank you so much for listening today. If you feel the newsworthy helps keep you informed without too much anxiety or too many opinions or too much time, please be sure to tell someone else today to give this show a try. All right, we'll be back with another news roundup tomorrow. Until then, have a great day.